the Vice President for the Ohio State Beekeepers Association. What I wanted to explain today is winter feeding, a supplement for your honeybees. I use what we call a sugar board. I make these. These sugar boards are the outside diameter of your 8 frame, 10 frame, or even a nuke box. You make the frame accordingly. It's 1.5 inches high, and I use 1/2 inch hardware cloth that we staple to the bottom of the ship. On the front of it, I do drill a 3/4 inch hole, and this is for ventilation, and it's just another means of an entrance or an escape for the bees. During the winter time, if your hives are close to the ground and snow builds up on the front entrance, just another way to getting out. This will then set on top of your deep hive body, or your 2 hive bodies that you have. And then your inner cover will sit on top of this with the notch down, and your outer cover on top of it. Now, what I'll do with this is fill this up with sugar. And what this will end up being is a insurance policy for your bees so that they do have plenty of food stores for the winter. As they go through the food stores, if it's a warmer winter, the bees are more active in the hive, they're going to eat more honey, they're going to move around more, and they'll finish up your bottom box and they'll move up in the top. And come March is a very critical month for food for the bees. They will have this sugar board on top of them. Now, we all know sugar isn't the best food for honeybees. I like to explain it like us as humans, we could survive on candy bars. You could eat a candy bar 3 times a day and survive probably just fine. It's not the healthiest way of eating, but we could survive. It's the same way with the sugar. The sugar isn't the best for the bees, but it's just an added insurance policy for the bees to have food, and this itself will be sitting right over top of the cluster, so the bees will be able to get right to it. So that being said, I'm going to make one of these up for us, and I'll show you what I've got. I made one up Saturday, and it's set up already, and I'll show you that here in a second. But what I do is I'll take wax paper and line the inside of this sugar frame that I made up, this sugar board. And the sugar can also help with the wicking of the moisture in the hive. I take a 2x4 and I'll place it in front of the entrance hole on the inside of this sugar board. So that's what I've got so far. I don't know if you can see that. This is how it's set up. And then I'll use roughly 12 pounds of sugar and a little bit of water. You can put Honeybee Healthy in it, any of that kind of stuff, maybe a little bit of vinegar if you wish to help with the molding aspect of it, but it typically doesn't mold. And then at the end of the year, in the springtime, if the bees use it, that's great, that's what you got it there for. But if the bees get up there and they hardly touch it and they hardly eat it, that's great too, because you have plenty of storage honey for the bees for the winter. But whatever's left, you can break out of this container, throw it in a pot of hot water, and make syrup out of it. And feed it right back to the bees in the spring to your new colonies that you might purchase, or if you need to build up new comb on your frames. So you want to be careful. This is a 1/2 pint of water. Sometimes it depends on how much sugar. You don't want this really, really wet because it'll take forever to dry and it'll ooze out. The water will run. So it depends on how much sugar you got in here. You just knead it, and I just want to get it all good and wet. just damp. So once you get it mixed up good, then we're going to pack it around this 2x4 inside the sugar board. And that's pretty good. It's kind of, you can almost make a snowball out of it, but it breaks up fairly easy. You don't want it really, really wet. So what we're going to do now is pack this on top of this wax paper around this 2x4. Now I've heard of beekeepers not using wax paper, and you don't need to. But with that 1/2-inch hardware cloth on the bottom, this sugar, the wax paper keeps the sugar inside this sugar board. This depends on how much of a mess you want to make. The bees will eat through the sugar, or through the wax paper. And then you just spread it around. And like I said, this is about 12 pounds of sugar, and I filled this up pretty nice. So now we're going to pack this down, and it'll take about 3 days to harden up. And this one had that 2x4 in it. I took it out. So what we're going to do now is take a utility knife, and I'm going to cut out this plastic, this wax paper here, to expose the 1/2-inch hardware cloth. And by doing so, then when I put this over top of the cluster of bees, they've got easy access to walk up through and to start to consume the sugar. Now, if you get into, let me back up just for a second. Typically, I'll put these on after Thanksgiving. I don't put them on, like right now, today's October 11th. You've got too many yellow jackets around, you'll have a problem with yellow jackets. They'll be robbing this, they'll get inside. So after Thanksgiving, I put this on my bee boxes and close it up. You can get in during the winter time. You know, even if you have a cold 20-degree day, you can still crack the lid of your outer cover and look down inside and see where the bees are at. If they're up in your sugar, that's meaning that maybe you didn't have enough food stores built up in your hive for the winter. If they start consuming all this sugar, and let's say it's March and it's almost gone, what I also do is I'll make the same consistency, the same sugar, and I put them in these little aluminum trays. I got several of these made up. I can just take the lid off. I got a big sugar block. I can just lay that down inside the feeder, and the bees will come up and eat it. I'll leave these on typically until about the 1st of April, and then I'll take them off, and whatever sugar's left, like I mentioned earlier, I'll dilute down in some hot water and then start feeding it back to the bees as a sugar syrup. About today is supplement feeding for honeybees, and during the winter time. A lot of times the queen, as we all know, doesn't always totally shut down and quit laying brood during the winter. She just lays it very little and keeps it going. There are different patties, pollen patties that you can add to your winter feeding program, but you have to be careful and use the correct protein supplement. What I do for what I call winter patties, or some people even call them Krabby Patties, is I use AP23, and it's I purchased it from Dedon, And it's a lower protein, it's 47% protein. And the reason being that you want to have a lower protein is that you don't want the bees to consume the high protein as the spring patties are, because of they can get dysteria, they're unable to make cleansing flights, and they'll have gut issues, and you can have where they'll make a real mess inside your hive by defecating. So with the lower protein, it is recommended that you use it, and it's just better for the bees, and it gives them a little something to eat and have their protein, their patties for what little brood that they are still raising through the winter. So, like I said, here's AP23, it's a 5-pound package. I think it was around $30 to purchase this package. I bought it last year. When anything that, after it's opened, I do keep it in the freezer to help prolong it and keep it a little more fresh. So that being said, I get to my recipe that I use. I use 4 pounds of sugar. I'm going to mix that into a mixer. Just a half a pound, which has been weighed out already, of the AP23. And then you can use a half a pound of the Carol syrup, or you can use water. I had done this Saturday, so I know exactly what a half a pound is. Do this without blowing it all over. You gotta stir this up so it's just sticky, a consistency where it's just not really falling apart, but it's like a wet cookie dough, which I'll show you that here in a second. It doesn't take long to make up. So, you just want to be able to pack it. And then we're going to make a patty out of that. So to make the patty, I take, there again, good old wax paper, and I'm going to put a big glob of it on my wax paper. How much you use is strictly up to you. And you can use a rolling pin to roll this out, but I typically just smash it down with my hand. So you get a little patty like this, and then again, I use sugar boards, which I past video. This sugar board here then will put this patty in the sugar board. You can lay it with a wax paper on it, and the bees will come up and eat it, and that's what you've got. You do have to be careful when you're using patties because of small hive beetles. You don't always need to put a great big patty into your hive. Just put little pieces, break off some corners of it, and place that in. The small hive beetles do enjoy the patty. They like to get it underneath the patty. They'll lay eggs, and you'll have your larvae from the small hive beetles and what have you underneath that. So just be careful how much you're putting in, keep an eye on it. When you need more, throw another little piece in there, and you can feed that way through the winter like that. I've been making a few videos this morning on supplement winter feeding for your honeybees. We made a sugar board earlier. We've made a pollen patty called what I like to call a winter patty. It's a lower protein, 47% protein, and then now I want to make a spring patty, which is higher in protein. It's 60% protein, and it's from Ultra Bee, and I purchased this from Man Lake. The recipe that I've got today, I obtained it from Lori Miller, from Miller Compound Apiary and Farming website. She's based out of Roy, Washington. I talked to Lori on the phone. She gave me permission to use this recipe. I've used it for several years. It works really well. The bees do like it. And it's got a lot of extra stuff in it other than just this pure protein, the 60% protein. In this particular recipe is 5 pounds of sugar, actually this is a 4-pound bag, and I've got another 1 pound of sugar here. So I've got 5 pounds of sugar in here. I'm then going to add 1 1/3 cup of cold water, 1 1/3 cup of apple cider vinegar, 3 ounces of olive oil, and then a 1/4 teaspoon, which I'm going to add that right now. Then I also got 2 teaspoons of Honeybee Healthy in here. So we're going to add this liquid to this, to the sugar, what have you. I'll now add a teaspoon, or a 1/4 of a teaspoon, a 1/4 of a teaspoon of Electrolytes and Vitamins. And now what I did is I bought this from a Tractor Supply Store where they sell chicken products, and you can buy electrolytes and vitamins for your chickens, and that's all this is. And I'll just add that to, it's just a 1/4 of a teaspoon. We add that to the recipe. Another thing to keep it fresh, now we do have the apple cider vinegar in there, but the recipe calls for fresh fruit preservative, and it's 1 teaspoon of that. And then I already had mixed in here 4 cups of the Ultra Bee pollen and 4 cups of brewer's yeast. Now this I just purchased off Amazon. It's like $12 for the pound of it. The whole pound goes into this recipe. So now we're going to turn this on and mix it. Should put the liquid in first. Now, if this is too liquidy, you can add a little more of the Ultra Bee pollen to it. You don't want this to where it's going to be oozing out again. You just want to make a nice cookie dough. Let it mix up for a while and then leave it set for like 10-15 minutes. It'll thicken up. So after this is mixed up well, and after you leave it set for 10-15 minutes, you'll have your cookie dough consistency. There again, what I do is I take my wax paper, take a nice ball size of it, put it on the wax paper, put a second piece of wax paper on top of it, and then I do use a rolling pin, and I'm going to roll it out roughly 1/4 of an inch. Now that's what I'm going to end up getting. It'll be about that size, and then I take a knife and I cut them in half. I got the wax paper on both sides, and what I'll do then is put these in a sandwich bag or a big Ziploc 1-gallon bag. I'll put maybe 10 of them in the bag, and then I'll throw them in my freezer. And then when you need them during the springtime, you can take one out. I don't take the wax paper off or anything like that. The bees will start eating on the pollen patty, the exposed portion of it. Just keep an eye on it, because there again, small hive beetles like pollen patties as well. And if you have a small hive beetle problem that has lived with your cluster of bees through the winter, they will get underneath this and start laying eggs, and you'll have some larva problems. So you want to keep an eye on it. This might be way too much. Maybe you need to take your knife and just cut off a 1/4 of this and lay that in. There again, it can be laid inside the sugar board and placed on top of your beehive. I hope you enjoyed these videos. Thank you.